What's up, everyone? Back again with a very brief monotype meta discussion today because Landorus Incarnate, or I will be now referring to as Landorus-I, has been banned from the monotype tier. So for those of you who are confused, Landorus Incarnate is his genie form, and Landorus Therian, who I'll be referring to as Lando-T, is the kind of lion-ish tiger form, who a lot of singles players know as the Menace, the Scourge of OU. So it's specifically its genie form, its incarnate form that's banned, not its kind of lion Therian form. This one will still be allowed. So with that in mind, I'm going to be going over why it got banned, the reasoning behind that, and the kind of effects it's going to have on the two types, and as well as that, what kind of alternatives you can run instead of this Pokemon on your flying team or your ground team. So first off, why it got banned. So it was banned by the council, the Monotype Council, because it was thought it was just too good of a kind of a wall breaker in the tier. A lot of types struggle to check this thing effectively because of its 115 base on top of sheer force and life orb. This thing hits really hard on the special side, so it was definitely hard for a lot of types to be able to properly wall this. On top of that, it has great access to coverage with Stab Earth Power. It gets like a coverage with Psychic for those maybe poison types that levitate or fly, like Crobat and Weezing, for example. It gets Sludge Wave for grass types if you are running it on a ground team. That was a fantastic answer to a lot of grass types in the tier. And as well as that, it also had Gravity. And why Gravity is really good on specifically ground teams is it completely ignores your opponent's levitate, it ignores their flyers, it ignores their air balloons, so all your ground attacks can just hit without worry of immunities for 5 turns, which is really good because, as I said, Earth Power is sheer force and life orb boosted, so this means like you couldn't even swap in your Celesteela, for example, on a steel team to be able to wall this because your gravity completely ignores its flying typing, making Landorus an even tougher opponent to wall out. So for those reasons are kind of the main reasons why the council decided to ban it. Now, honestly, it wasn't the top thing on my radar. I haven't had too much trouble with it, but to be honest, I haven't seen too much of it in the tier. And generally when it comes to bans, I'm a bit conservative with my ban taste, and I actually like a lot of Pokemon to be banned just to kind of give other types a chance. So I'm not at all upset to see Landorus-I banned, and I think it's definitely a healthy step in the meta overall. Now let's look at kind of what alternatives are going to be on the grass, the ground and flying types. So first of all, I don't think either of these types have lost massively from losing Landorus-I. I don't think it was like, for example, Kartana being banned on grass, where grass wasn't a great type, but it was really being carried by Kartana, while Kartana was definitely too good on steel, which I'd argue is one of the best, if not the best type in the tier. So I think the removal of Landorus-I is going to be inherently quite healthy for the meta, because we do have alternatives to this Pokemon on both ground and flying, and I said both of which are pretty good types. I would argue flying is one of the best types in the game at the moment. Even without Landorus-I still think it's going to be quite good, and ground is also in a decent position right now where I don't think it needed Landorus-I to be good. So on a ground type team, you could easily run Nidoking, and Nidoking serves a fairly similar purpose to Landorus-I, also coming with a sheer force ability, as well as being able to use Life Orb to ignore recoil. Now, its special attack is certainly less impressive than Landorus-I, scoring 30 points less, which is quite significant, as well as that its speed tier isn't quite as good, and across the board its bulk is worse, so it generally is seen as pretty much a strictly worse Landorus-I, stat-wise. However, it's still a really solid Pokemon, and it has access to Flamethrower and Ice Beam, which are two moves Landorus-I couldn't run, so that's definitely something it has over Landorus-I. And why we would run Flamethrower if we already have things like Earth Power, or if we already have things like maybe Sludge Wave to take care of the grass types, and Earth Power to take care of the steel types, specifically with things in mind like Ferrothorn. Flamethrower can be really nice to deal with them, or things like Celesteela, Skarmory, or Corviknight, all of which can easily wall out your Earth Powers because of their flying typing, and the Flamethrower generally is just quite nice to deal with them. And then Ice Beam is just generally very good coverage to have, as Ice Beam, or Ice in general, is one of the best offensive types in the game. As well as that, I believe you can also run the coveted Bolt Beam coverage with Ice Beam and Thunderbolt on something with Sheer Force and Life Orb. So for that reason, I wouldn't say Nidoking is a bad Pokemon. Far from it, I think Nidoking is fantastic on the ground type. So I don't think it's a massive loss in that regard. Now, both of them can run Lando-T. However, Lando-T generally runs a very different set to Lando-I. Lando-I would be more of like a special wall breaker, while Lando-T often runs either Choice Scarf or kind of a bulky support. So with Intimidate, it can run things like U-Turn, Knock Off, Stealth Rock, as well as Earthquake. It can run, I think, Smackdown if you're running on a ground team and you really are worried about the steel flying types, especially with the lack of gravity. Actually, can it learn gravity? It can even learn gravity itself if you're really worried about those flying types in the tier. Alternatively, it often runs Scarf with things like Earthquake and Stone Edge, Knock Off, U-Turn, so it definitely has a different role to Lando-I on a ground team, but that's again not to say it's a bad Pokemon. Now for the flying type, if you're strictly looking for an electric immunity, Lando-Therion or Lando-T does the job quite well. So we're not too worried about losing Lando-I in that regard. We still have the electric immunity. However, as I said, it's definitely not the special wall breaker its incarnate brother is. So with that in mind, we can easily use Thunderous, who kind of serves a similar purpose, but maybe not as good. Again, not to say definitely not bad. So what Thunderous does, with thanks to its ability Volt Absorb, it comes with an immunity to electric types, assuming your opponent doesn't run Mold Breaker or some Mold Breaker variant, which is super important for any flying type to have. As well as that, it has the same speed tier at 101, but having much more impressive special attack. So this can also run Life Orb. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite get the sheer force boost that ignores the recoil from Life Orb. Though that said, its move pool is pretty decent. It gets things like Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, and Dark Pulse. As well as things like Flash Cannon, which can be okay, or Focus Blast for the steel types in the tier, which can be quite nice. It also can get Nasty Plot, which is super important because this thing can become like insanely strong. With one Nasty Plot, for example, let's say we're running a Modest Nature, it hits well over 800 special attack after one Nasty Plot, and this is going to make this thing a really, really good wall breaker. Now, another reason I think Lando-I was very dangerous in the tier is because the lack of hidden power in this generation means a lot of types can no longer run hidden power ice for dealing with things like Lando, making this thing even harder to check. So Lando-T, obviously sharing the same typing, is still this quad weak to ice, so do beware of that. So overall, I think this is going to be a very healthy change for the meta. I think Flying is still one of the best types in the game, and Ground is in a pretty decent position itself. It has the alternatives to be used instead of Lando-I, so it's not like it's a Pokemon that's been banned and one type is getting caught in the collateral damage. An example of this might be like Kartana, where Grass isn't a great type overall, but Steel was way too good, so Kartana had to go, which really hurt Grass in the collateral. I think both of these types are in a good position right now, and I think with the alternatives that the type has to offer, they're not going to be too heavily nerfed, while also being generally good for other weaker types. So if you are a player who plays Mono Ground or plays Mono Flying, definitely let me know what your thoughts on this change are. If you're happy, if you're not happy, what kind of alternative Pokemon you think you'll be running instead of Lando. And if you don't play Flying or Ground, let me know down below what type you do play and if you're happy. For example, I mainly play Mono Poison. I do play every type of Poison, one of my favorite types, so I'm quite happy to see such a big threat to my team gone, while not nerfing the types too much, making them too weak in the process. So if you made it this far, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate this. And if you like this kind of content, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment. All that kind of stuff helps me out massively. Helps me grow, helps me understand what kind of content you like to see from my channel. So I've linked the thread to the Smogon band down below. If you want to check that out, it's in the description along with my Discord. With that, I hope you have a fantastic day and take care, everyone.